Greetings, I'm Nate Wakeford. I'm your masculinity and mindset coach. Today I'm going to be answering a question from the Sovereign Brotherhood community. And I have a cat in the background. The question goes like this. Are you falling into the feminist trap? Do you find yourself trying to please women? Does your masculinity change depending on what a woman you are interested in wants? Are you constantly displaying yourself as a protector and provider? In what ways do you plan to continue and or improve your approach to your relationship with women? So this obviously is a question relating to masculine frame and women. And it's interesting. It starts off with the concept of the feminist trap. So the feminist trap, from my perspective, is where a woman seeks to develop her masculine traits, her masculine qualities. And in doing so, she alienates men who have masculine frame, because the masculine nature is competitive. So when you have a woman in her masculine nature, she's going to become competitive to the masculine nature. You have this polarity established when you have a dominant masculine polarity with a submissive, receptive feminine polarity, dominant penetrative polarity of the masculine. And that's the natural polarity that arises. What happens is when men are on their path and they're not fully integrated, they're not fully empowered yet, they fall into the feminist trap because their masculine frame isn't strong enough, and to create balance or polarity with the feminine, they regress into their feminine, because the feminine woman reflection is in her masculine. Because there's always, nature, creation always wants to create a balance of polarity. That's a natural state, like night and day, uh, good, bad, so to speak, dark, light. There's this natural polarity. So when a man's not in his strong masculine frame, he will tend to give up his center, give up his internal authority, and attempt to please the woman that he's attracted to. And the woman in it often develops a sense of grandeur and entitlement and disdain in some ways for the weak man. And when a man is trying to please, he's trying to get something from the feminine that he doesn't already acknowledge within himself, which further weakens him, because it places the power of how he might get that need fulfilled in the hands of the woman. So if the man is trying to get validation, approval, acceptance, love, whilst denying within himself, then that need still needs to be fulfilled, but he'll go about trying to fulfill that externally. And when a woman is more in a masculine and less in her nurturing role, she's going to be more combative. She's going to be more, in a challenging dynamic. That when a man is naturally strong or has developed himself to be strong in his masculine frame, strong internal authority, not externally referenced, because he's not seeking love, acceptance, approval, he becomes a high value man. And then the balance tips the other way. The feminine begins to be magnetized towards him instead of a weaker man chasing the feminine. Does your masculinity change depending on what woman you're interested in or what she wants? See, men have this certain, it's like a wealth threshold. This is a feminine sexual magnetism threshold. When a man is really, really into a woman, he taps out at some stage. So just say he's confident around a woman he's not particularly interested in, that he doesn't find sexually attractive, then he's going to respond differently to a woman that he's extremely attracted to. And that has to do with sexual power. If his sexual power is less than his desire for the feminine, that the woman that's in front of him, then he will be overrun by her magnetism, her charm, her sexual presence. If his sexual power is stronger, then she won't wave him, and that'll actually make or won't waver him, and that will make her even more attracted to him because she's going to know that most men, if she's very attractive or has a high level of sexual magnetism, she's going to know most men are interested in her. That's been conditioned in her throughout her teens, probably all the way into her 20s or however old she is. And when a man's kind of impervious to that charm, and when his sexual power is stronger than her, she's going to have a curiosity. She's going to be like, why isn't this man bending over backwards or being sucked into my vortex like most men? And even more so if he plays with her, he's playful with her, and in the way that he shows that that he can acknowledge her beauty, but he's not at all wavered by her beauty. He becomes even more attractive. And that shows a man who has an internal authority and an internal frame of reference. So it's where the external variables, external impulses don't press upon the man or change his behaviors. He chooses, he has sovereignty. He has his own authority to decide how he responds and to who. And whereas a man who doesn't have that, he will dance for the woman. If the woman says, I want this, he'll do that. If the woman says she doesn't want that anymore, then he'll go, okay, what else do you want? And so he has no sense of regard for himself because he's pursuant in trying to get something from her, where she will lose interest and respect for a man that doesn't have his own direction, doesn't have his own desires that he works to fulfill within himself. So if the man has learned to fulfill his own needs and he's self-contained, he lives a high quality life, then the only thing that he will really desire from the feminine is that he's further amplified in a positive way by her presence. If she doesn't do that, then he's not going to, be particularly desired towards her or magnetic towards her. And that's what you'll start to see is high value men, they have options, but they're not wavered. They're contained within themselves. They're happy within themselves. And whereas the weaker man needs to have something fulfilled externally to him. So hit that which makes him vulnerable. So often you'll see strong men that have worked on themselves consistently, whether it's in the area of physicality, whether it's in, actually dating or dancing or any things that might make a man attractive to a woman or providing, making money. Then the more that he rises up into his power, the more he has power over money, the more he has power over sexual magnetism and sexual allure, the more he's able to hold his center, the stronger that he becomes. And he takes seriously his role of a protector and provider, but he's not dancing to the whims or desires of the woman. He's not going to respond to entitlement. He's going to naturally want to take care and provide for his woman, but not when a woman isn't receptive and also pouring her love, care, devotion into him. If she's just trading, meaning she has an sense of entitlement because she's attractive, but then doesn't add value to the man, if the man has value, he won't stay around very long because he's going to want a woman who is complementary to him in his path. And likely he'll take pleasure in providing and taking care of the woman. So there's a path that needs to happen in developing yourself in your sexual power and in your power in a relationship to women. Path that I took was first, obviously, to recognize at the start that I sucked, that I wasn't particularly confident, but it wasn't just with the women. I was not social or confident socially at all. And because I had been bullied extensively as a kid, I didn't really smile in photos as a teenager. I was quite isolated growing up in a very rural part of Victoria in Australia. And it wasn't until I went to uni and I saw that women were interested in me because I had very little dating experience in my high school years. And at some point in time, I was catching up on the social life, partying and things like that. But I still wouldn't have said that I was particularly confident and empowered yet. And then I started to study, you know, pick up artistry in dating. And there's some shadowy elements to that in terms of the way such certain people teach. But the way that I thought the path that I took was through a guy called Eben Pagan. And he took the approach of mastering yourself to develop yourself as a high value man. And this is really where my first introduction into masculine identity optimization came into being. Uh, and it was about developing yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally in different ways. To become learning how to communicate better with women, learning how to lead women, learning how to dance or how to develop skills that would convey your status as a man, um, you know, building yourself financially. And then I was like, huh, okay, I can actually craft and build myself to become a high value man. So I went about doing that. And I studied all sorts of things. I studied soul dancing, and soon I became significantly more confident with women. And then I started to heal my subconscious wounds and traumas, which gave me even more confidence. And then soon, as part of that journey of healing subconscious wounds, I really developed the concept of masculine frame. And it was actually in more recent years when I integrated my dark masculine that I felt that I came into a considerable amount of power with the feminine, the primal nature. And the part that I was missing in that dark masculine was what our now call masculine frame is, having a true internal authority and internal frame of reference. And it was at that moment that my relationship changed. And that changed after a pretty painful breakup where I was quite attached to the woman that I was dating. Because prior, I had a bit of what I would call a false frame, which I was strong in a lot of ways because I had done a lot of work on myself, and including in my masculinity. But when I connected with a woman that I found very attractive, I buckled, which comes back to the original point here. All of a sudden, I was in the color of this is quite a rare woman. This is a powerful woman. And so all of a sudden I met my match in a way to my current level of power that I'd integrated at the time. And so that exposed some things. And that's when and at that same time, I was being introduced to the concept of reclaiming my darkness because I'd been a love and light guy and, got bought into the new age movement and become a soft, loving, open masculine, flowing masculine that had kind of given up his primal nature. I'd been vegan for 17 years to give you some sort of idea. And in that relationship, I took up eating meat again. I really doubled down on working out, hitting the gym, becoming very strong. I started to explore again resources around strong masculinity, different people's takes on how to develop that. And so it was in the integration, and this is why I created Sovereign Brotherhood and the Sovereign Power Program and Sovereign Rising, is to follow the path that I took to develop myself in my masculine frame. And I went from, trying to please people and not having strong boundaries and then being challenged by the feminine, buckling at some stage, now holding strong. And now I'm obviously dating a very, an attractive but very strong woman, and also connected to her intuition, her psychic natures. And it's because and this is a woman who's coached very powerful men. And I'm able to do so because I did extensive work on myself. And I won't say I'm perfect, but I'm certainly quite unwavering now in that power and that potential because of the work that I've done over many years. But the integration of the dark masculine, the healing of the subconscious wounds, the developing the framework of the internal authority and internal frame of reference, the developing the skill sets and leadership skills around, how to best interact with the feminine, communication skills, how to spike, emotion and create passion, and also how to become a good lover and be sexually empowered. There's a lot of different things. I studied Tantra, traditional Tantra, modern, Neo Tantra. I studied, obviously I did a lot of work with Mankind Project, a lot of coaching in general, through various coaches that help to develop me in different ways, both financially and business, and then physically, also studying martial arts. There's so many different things that I did in the period of building myself up and strengthening my mind. I did marathons. I hiked to the tops of mountains. I stayed in the wilderness. I took out meditation. I did breath work, ice baths, saunas, or temescals, so many different things, all to develop myself physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. And so what this comes down to is you develop yourself as a powerful man. When you have when you have reclaimed your power, when you develop yourself as a powerful man, you will have power over both money and business and in relationships and in dynamics of relating. And you'll start to see that you have influence and that you can lead when you match that power to divine intent and divine will. When you match that power to service, then you start to become a magnetic leader that really attracts people towards you and creates a movement, or certainly creates community and creates, you know, even a brotherhood of men that become reflections of you. Because you're on the path, you start to attract people on the path. So I hope this has been useful. And if you have any questions, jump into the Sovereign Brotherhood school community. Links will be below this video. Thanks so much for watching. I trust it's been useful.